Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome again to Lesson 2 of the Daniel Revelation Prophecy course, Prophecy class, Prophecy Bible study, however you want to call it. Guys, I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited. We are going to get through Daniel chapter 1 today. But we are also going to have a little bit of a history lesson. So if you like history and you like looking at maps, this is for you. We're going to try to make this exciting. We've got to have a biblical background of Daniel, a historical background of Daniel, see what was going on in the region around Israel with all the other nations around him, what was going on during the time of his life. Okay, there was a lot of craziness going on, and we want to kind of pinpoint exactly what was taking place during his time and during the Babylonian captivity. You guys have heard, a lot of you have read a lot of the Old Testament, and you know about the Babylonian captivity. That is when Judah was taken captive to Babylon. This was a judgment from God. So we are going to go get into that. We're going to talk about the 3 separate deportations of the Babylonian captivity. There's a lot of different viewpoints, opinions, theories about these deportations. And I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in theories, right? We are interested in truth. So today we're going to set the record straight. We're going to get down to the nitty gritty of exactly the time frame that this took place. If you were here last week, we had lesson 1, and I just want to do a quick overview of lesson 1. Lesson 1, we talked about the 3 heavens, right? We talked about the 3 heavens. We had the first heaven, which was called the atmospheric realm. This is also spiritual Babylon's realm and the harlot's kingdom. Okay, heaven number 2 was what we call the celestial heaven. Okay, this is where the planets, the moons, and the stars reside, and this is also where Satan operates out of. Okay, we talked a lot about Satan last week, and we talked about how he resides and operates out of the second heaven. He has access to earth, he has access to the first heaven, but he also has access to the second heaven. He was booted out of the third heaven with a third of the angels, but he still has access point to those areas. We learned that Satan is not cast down to earth until the very middle of the tribulation period. That is 3.5 years into the tribulation, the first 42 months, then he is cast down to earth. And he is not cast down to Hades or hell or the bottomless pit until the very end of the tribulation period. Okay, so we don't want to get anything confused. We need to kind of set that foundation. And of course, we had the third heaven, which is the dwelling place of God, which is where all saints go when they die, and which is where the other 2/3 of the angels go to and fro from to do God's bidding and God's work. Okay, so that's what we did last week, but we are on to lesson 2. Guys, it's the afternoon. This is our second take. We got kind of punched in the gut yesterday by Satan, so we're having to do this again for you. But I can feel the Lord, I can feel the Holy Spirit running today, and you know what? That's a good thing. And you know what we do when Satan punches us in the gut? We punch him back in the face 10 times, right? All right, so let's do this. First off, Daniel. The meaning of Daniel, Daniel's name in Hebrew is God is my judge. Okay, God is my judge. And a lot of the Old Testament names, Hebrew names, mean something. And we just wanted to tell you exactly what Daniel's name meant. Daniel was taken captive to Babylon in 605 BC. Okay, 605 BC. And I am going to tell you here today that 605 BC was not one of the main deportations to Babylon. There was 3 main deportations, but 605 BC was not one of those. Neither was 602 BC. Okay, and a lot of people think, well, 602 BC, 605 BC, some say 601 BC. But guys, I'm going to explain to you that it was 598 BC, 597 BC, and 586 BC. Those were the main ones. Okay, so let's get a little history of what was taking place in the region right before Daniel is taken to Babylon. Okay, so there was a battle of Carchemish. Carchemish is situated in modern-day Turkey. Gaziantep, Turkey, if you guys are looking at your map, you can kind of see that. Gaziantep, Turkey, right on the border of Syria and Turkey. And there was a major battle between the powerhouses in that region. Okay? It was the Medo-Persian Empire and Babylonian empires. They were allied together against Egypt and the Assyrian Empire. So this is a battle, this is like a clash of the titans, okay? And so these four kingdoms are going at each other, 2 against 2. And so we kind of want to see exactly where these guys were located on our map. So I don't know if we're on there yet, we'll go back to it. But if we look at the Median or Persian Empire at this time, its capital was Ecbatana, which is in the province of Hamadan in Iran. So if we look at Iran, and we see Karmansa, and right on kind of like the Iraqi-Iran border, Kamansa, and then if you look to the right, you'll see Iraq, okay, A-R-A-K. In between those two cities was the city of Ecbatana and the province of Hamadan. So that was the capital of the Median Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire at that time. Okay, so now let's look at the Babylonian Empire. To do that, we just go over to Iraq and we look at the city of Baghdad, okay? The capital city of Baghdad of Iraq. That was ancient Babylon, okay? Babylon is present-day Baghdad. Now, if we look at the capital of Assyria, we look at the Tigris River right there by Baghdad, and we just take that due north, and you're going to come to a city called Mosul, okay? Nineveh is now present-day Mosul. So that was the city of Nineveh. That was the Assyrian Empire's capital. Many of you guys have heard of Nineveh before because a lot of us have read the book of Jonah, which is one of the awesomest books of the Bible. And he went up there and prophesied judgment to Nineveh. Now, of course, we go to Egypt, who Assyria was allied with, and we look at the city of Cairo. That was ancient Memphis. Memphis was the capital of Egypt at this time, and it is now present-day Cairo. And if you look to the north here, you see Alexandria. Those were the two major cities during the Grecian and Roman empires. Alexandria becomes huge on the stage. It's definitely during the Roman Empire. It's one of the main city ports in the entire Mediterranean. It was a huge battleground, and we're going to get to that later in Daniel, because we'll be getting hardcore into this stuff. So after the fall of Nineveh, so like I said, we have Babylon and the Medo-Persians kind of taking out Assyria at first, okay? These guys are battling each other. Assyria was the top dogs, so to speak, in this area, but the Persian Empire and the Babylonian Empire decided, you know what, we're going to join together and we're taking these guys out. So we get to 612 BC, right? And Nineveh falls. And the Assyrian Empire really takes a hit here. And so they move their capital to Haran, okay, and which is present-day Sanliurfa, Turkey, and that's also on the border of Turkey and Syria. And so they move over there, and they stay there till about 609 BC, and then there's another major battle there, and Assyria gets defeated again. So after that defeat, they move over to Carchemish, which we just talked about. And when they go to Carchemish, that's when they ally with Egypt, okay? They're kind of grasping for straws, and they're saying, okay, we got to do something, just trying to stay alive, and them and Egypt kind of get together, and they form this alliance, and it is like a showdown. And after this battle, which was 605 BC, that it changes the landscape of the whole region, okay? And so after this battle, I should say the Persian Empire and the Babylonian Empire had an agreement. So when Persian Empire, when they won this battle, they said, okay, well, you guys are going to take this land, and Babylon, you guys are going to take this land. So when that happened, Nebuchadnezzar, after this battle, establishes himself as king 5 months after the Battle of Carchemish. And what he does is he starts marching his army south. Okay, he is marching his army south into Egyptian territory. And as he does this, he's taken over places like Damascus. I don't know if you're looking at this map right now, but he's taken over places like Damascus, Lebanon, Israel, parts of Jordan, the Gaza Strip, Palestine, and he even takes over the Sinai Peninsula right up to the doorstep of Egypt. Okay, this was all Egyptian territory at this time. And so Nebuchadnezzar takes over this whole area. Okay, and so to give you a little background of what would take place when he would do this, and this is exactly what took place to Jerusalem as well. When he would come into a city or a province or a town, as he would come down and kind of take them over, he basically would say this: hey, listen, Egypt is no longer in control. I'm in control. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. You're going to pay me a yearly tribute. And you know what? Right now, I'm going to take my first year's payment up front. So I'm going to take some gold, I'm going to take some silver, and I'm going to take probably some of your people to make ambassadors and advisors and diplomats and different things, liaisons to my kingdom. Okay, so that's what he would do right when he first would come to a kingdom or a province or a city. And so he would do this, and he would say, okay, after that, I want you to pay me a yearly tribute. Pay me my yearly tribute. And if I go to war, or if something happens and I need some soldiers, you're going to have to send me some soldiers. You're going to have my back. Okay, you do these things, and I will leave you alone. I will let you worship your gods. I will let you guys do your thing. Just pay me. Pay me my money, and I'll leave you alone. That's pretty much all you had to do with Nebuchadnezzar, okay? And back him when he needed some soldiers. But like I said, he would take with him some of the royal family, or he may take some of the wise men, or actually the city or town or province would actually pick some people to go back with Nebuchadnezzar to Babylon, like I said, to be diplomats and ambassadors for the kingdom of Babylon, and be that go-between to these different nations. There's a lot of different languages, a lot of different people, and so he wanted to have these people in place so that he could have keep his foreign affairs in order. He was a very intelligent, very smart man. Okay, and so this, when they march to Jerusalem here and do the same thing with Jerusalem as they did all these other areas, this is where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego come into place. Okay, and we find out later that these guys are trained for a 3-year period in order to learn the Babylonian customs and become advisors to the king. Okay, this was par for the course back in this day, especially in Nebuchadnezzar's day. Okay, so we're going to look a little bit about Daniel's lifespan. Daniel lived, that is insane back in this time period. If you lived about 65, 70 years old, you were considered ancient. So to live to 90 plus years old is just crazy, and especially for the time period that he lived through. And so I got a little timeline here I kind of made up here, which we can look at, and we'll just go through briefly. Daniel is born between 620 and 625 BC, somewhere in that area. We're not exactly sure. Okay, but he is born and he is raised during the glory days and the glory years of Jerusalem and Judah. This was during the days of Hosea, the last great king of Judah. Okay, so he got to see Jerusalem at its greatest, right before its fall. Okay, and then in 612 BC, we had the fall of Nineveh, okay, which is the capital of Assyria at this time. And that kind of changes things in the region. We have some powerhouses kind of jostling for position after that point. And then later, like we talked about in 605 BC, the Battle of Carchemish happens, and here comes Nebuchadnezzar and his army, and they start moving south. And when they do that, they get to Jerusalem, and they take Daniel and his 3 friends captive. Okay? 602 BC, 3 years later, he completes his training. Later, 562 BC, Nebuchadnezzar dies. And then a couple more kings reign after that. And Daniel sees, actually, the Babylonian Empire fall overnight. Okay, and one night the Persian Empire came in and took them out. We had Cyrus, King Cyrus of the Persians, and King Darius the Mede kind of like joined forces a little bit, and they took the Babylon out. Okay, so Daniel sees all this happen. And during all this, he is like very high position in Babylon. And right after Cyrus takes over Babylon, he also becomes a very high official, and we'll learn more about that in the Bible as well. But so he lives through that, and a big thing that happened in 539 BC, which we're going to talk a little bit about here and there, was the Cyrus decree. The Cyrus decree was when King Cyrus allowed the Jews to return back home to Judah to build the temple. Okay, this was when the 70-year judgment was over and the land was cleansed. And so the Lord's like, all right, you guys can go back to Jerusalem now. And the 70 years kind of started in 609 BC and last till 539 BC. We're not going to touch on that. I just want to get you caught up on where the 70-year mark is. So he sees this, and then he dies somewhere between 530 and 520 BC. So Daniel is lived long enough to see the restoration of the second temple. Guys, if you know the book of Ezra, it maps this out perfectly. After the Cyrus decree, he allows all them to go back to Judah and start to rebuild the temple. And so this is an amazing time period to live through. I don't even know how Daniel even kept his mind straight, knowing all this stuff and all the stuff he went through and everything that he saw. It was just absolutely crazy. But anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the next step here. What was Daniel? What exactly was Daniel? And I think many of you guys probably know. He said, well, Daniel was a prophet. Exactly. Daniel was a prophet, and he was probably one of the greatest of all prophets, right? I mean, a lot of us would agree. I think the book of Daniel is one of the top 5 books in the Bible. I love reading it. Everybody seems to like Daniel. He's awesome, right? So what is a prophet's main function and objective? Okay? A prophet's main objective and function is to reveal the Lord's will and messages to the public. Okay? That is what a prophet does. How does he or she do this? It is by being trained in certain gifts of the Spirit. And what are those gifts, guys? What are those gifts? We know that by reading 1 Corinthians chapter 2. And I'll read it out real quick for you. A spiritual gift is given to each of us so we can help each other. To one person, the Spirit gives the ability to give wise advice. To another, the same Spirit gives a message of special knowledge. The same Spirit gives great faith to another. And to someone else, the one Spirit gives the gift of healing. He gives one person to perform the power to perform miracles, and another the ability to prophesy. We know prophets do that. And he gives someone else the ability to discern whether a message is from the Spirit of God or from another spirit. There's another big one. Still another person is given the ability to speak in unknown languages, while another is given the ability to interpret what is being said, talking about speaking in tongues here. It is the one and only Spirit who distributes all these gifts, and he alone decides which gift each person should have. So, the main gift that a prophet has is the gift of not only prophesying, but the main gift is discerning of spirits. Okay, that is discerning of certain dreams, certain visions, certain messages he or she may be having, and whether they are from the Lord or a malevolent or evil spirit. Okay, you guys have heard about people going to a psychic or a medium or a sorcerer or whatever the Bible states, okay, a necromancer, things like that. There's all kinds of different ways that the Bible talks about it. But I will tell you, any of them that may consult the dead, a prophet and a medium have very similar abilities. Okay, they have very similar abilities. They are able to pick up on spiritual entities, spiritual things going on in and around their space. They are able to see in the spiritual realm, in the spiritual world. Okay, however, there is a huge difference between an ability and a gift. And the prophet has the gift of the Holy Spirit, that is, of discerning from spirits. Okay, listen, Satan has his prophets, but so does the Lord. And we will read in Daniel, in the very first chapter, that Daniel and his 3 friends were 10 times better than all of the magicians, astrologers, and mediums, and psychics in the whole land, and all the wise men. Why? Because they are the Lord's prophets. They have gifts from the Spirit of the Lord. Okay, there is a difference between an ability and a gift. And prophets of the Lord have that gift. That's why we go to the Lord and go to the prophets of the Lord, not to some medium. The Bible has always strictly forbidden us to do that. Okay? And so that's the difference between these two guys. Okay? And I just wanted you guys to remember that. So, not all prophets are the same. Okay? Some prophets are healers. Some work great miracles, and some prophesy. Some interpret visions and dreams really, really well, as others give messages to certain nations or certain individuals. And each prophet has a certain purpose or job from the Lord, and not all missions are the same. Okay? So let's look at Jeremiah real quick. We know by reading Jeremiah, obviously, he was a warning prophet. His message was to warn the people of Judah that judgment was coming and deportation to Babylon was coming. And if we look at a lot of the Old Testaments, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Amos, Joel, there's a bunch of them that are prophesying judgment to another nation. Repent, turn to the Lord, for judgment is at hand. Okay, a lot of them did that. But we also have guys like Elijah and Elisha. These guys were great miracle-working prophets. Okay, you heard about the competition against the prophets of Baal, taking down Jezebel's kingdom. Elijah did 7 miracles, and Elisha did 14 miracles. Okay, these guys did amazing things in the miracle-working realm of their gift. Okay, and the other thing I want to mention here that a lot of people forget about is King David. King David was a prophet, okay, and so was Joshua. After Moses died, Joshua kind of took the reins, right? However, these guys were what we call soldier prophets or war prophets. And you can lump in the prophet Samuel with those guys too. These guys were all considered soldier prophets. What do I mean by that? Is these guys guided the Lord's armies into battle. Okay, they directed the Lord's people at certain strategic points during war or during times where they were taking over a land or whatever they had to do. Take over this kingdom right now, but don't go over this city. I want you to go to this city first and then go back to this city. Or like you said to Joshua, I want you to march around Jericho 7 times and the kingdom will fall. Okay, these guys were prophets of the Lord, but they were soldier prophets. So I want to tell you a little bit of different types of prophets that we have. Each prophet has a different job and a certain set of skills that God gives them for whatever mission they are needed to do at that time. Okay? Now, Daniel is very similar to the prophet Joseph. Okay, these guys are very similar. We're going to kind of compare these guys real quick. Both of these prophets had the extraordinary gift of interpreting dreams and visions. The other thing that these guys did really well, and these two guys were probably the best at interpreting dreams and visions. There's bar none, these two probably are the best. But the other thing that these two guys did, there's a fly in here, man. That's why I'm doing that. But both of these prophets were there to establish and maintain their people in a foreign land. Okay, so if we look at Daniel, he gets taken to Babylon, and he is there for a good 5 to 7 years before everybody else starts to be deportated and come back to Babylon. Okay, and if we look at the scriptures, the Lord kind of raises Daniel up as a very high official. In fact, he was at one time second in command. And so he kind of establishes Daniel in the kingdom of Babylon before everybody else starts coming to Babylon. Yes, the Lord was judging them, but the Lord still loved them, and he's trying to protect them a little bit and trying to make their transition a little bit easier by at least having Daniel and his 3 friends very high up there in the ranks of the Babylonian kingdom. Okay? And if we look at Joseph kind of was like the same thing. We know that Joseph's brothers threw him into the pit. Then they decided, hey, we're going to get you back out of the pit. Instead, we're going to sell you into slavery to Egypt, right? So Joseph goes to Egypt, and after a few years, lo and behold, he does some interpreting of some dreams and vision. All of a sudden, he's second in command of the entire kingdom of Egypt. And we know later in the Bible that his brothers come down to see Joseph, and all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, there's Joseph, whoa. And they end up going back and telling their father Jacob, and they decide, because there was such a bad famine in the land, Jacob and his brothers and all their concubines and basically the whole nation of Israel decide to move down to Egypt where Joseph was. And here's Joseph, a second in command, a high-ranking official in the Egyptian army, and he is there to kind of help this transition and protect his people as they get there. So these guys are very close in what the Lord had them do in their missions. When it comes to comparisons in the Bible, there is no better comparison than the books of Revelation and Daniel. These two books go hand in hand. Okay, what John of Patmos wrote, one of the 5 books of the Bible, and he also obviously wrote Revelations. And what Daniel had to do were very similar in what the Lord instructed them to do. Okay, these are end times books. These are last day books, okay? We are learning the prophecies of end times in both of these books. And to understand, in order to understand prophecy, you need to understand both of these books, okay? Both of these books set the foundation for the return of Christ, and they both set the foundation for the rise of the Antichrist, okay? Both of these are interwoven like a quilt, and they go hand in hand. I was going to do a study just on Revelations, and that was what I was doing for the first couple of weeks, and the Lord just kept stopping. He's like, no, stop. I need you to do Daniel and Revelation, okay? Daniel kind of sets the foundation. It kind of sets the stage for Revelation. So we need to know Daniel before we get to that next step, because what we learn in Daniel, especially in the last half, sets the stage for what we're going to find out in Revelation. So that's what we're doing here, and that's why we're doing both of them. All right, so we are going to get to the first chapter of Daniel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of read a couple scriptures and then I'll talk a little bit. Read a couple scriptures and talk a little bit. But the first 3 scriptures we're going to get to, that is when we are going to take the 3 deportations and really explain these deportations in detail. Okay? That way we really know exactly what took place, because I don't want you to get confused. The first 3 verses confuse people and they automatically think, well, that was a deportation and that's exactly what happened. And I don't want you guys thinking that way. I want you to know the truth. We did a lot of studying on this, and I want you to know exactly when these things took place. So like I said, it's going to be a little bit of a history lesson, and we're going to get started here in a second. If you remember, when we talked earlier, King Nebuchadnezzar kind of marched his armies south after the Battle of Carchemish in 605 BC. He marches his armies south into Egyptian territory, and he finally gets to Judah and Palestine in that area, and he pretty much takes control of everything right then at that point. So kind of be thinking that, and then I'm going to read the first 3 scriptures here, and then we'll kind of dive into it after that. Okay, Daniel chapter 1. We'll take the first, I believe it's the first 3 scriptures here. During the 3rd year of King Jehoiakim's reign in Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came to Jerusalem and besieged it with his armies. The Lord gave him victory over King Jehoiakim of Judah. When Nebuchadnezzar returned to Babylon, he took with him some of the sacred objects from the temple of God and placed them in the treasure house of his God in the land of Babylonia. Okay, we're going to stop right there. It's the first 2. Okay, we're going to take the first 2 scriptures. Okay, so if we look here, listen, it says here that it was the 3rd year of King Jehoiakim's reign. Okay, the 3rd year of King Jehoiakim's reign. We know by reading 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles that King Jehoiakim's reign started after the death of King Hosea in 609 BC. That is 609 BC. So 3 years later, we're talking about 606 to 605 BC. There was a king in between Hosea and Jehoiakim, and he only reigned 3 or 4 months because he got shipped over to Egypt. Okay, so 605 BC is when Nebuchadnezzar comes down. This is the 3rd year of King Jehoiakim's reign, but it says in 2 Kings and in 2 Chronicles that Jehoiakim reigned in Jerusalem for 11 years. Okay, I'm not going to put that scripture up right now, but just trust me, go to your Bibles, look it up. It's in there. He reigns in Jerusalem for 11 years. So if it's 605 BC, guys, he still has 7 or 8 more years to reign in Jerusalem. So that is why I say this is not one of the first deportations. Yes, Nebuchadnezzar comes there. Yes, he kind of says, hey, this is what's going on. You're no longer paying tribute to Egypt. You're going to start paying me from now on. And he takes with him some of the articles, but he also allows Jehoiakim to reign as king. Okay, this was not a massive deportation. He takes with him some of the noblemen, some of these young guys to make them ambassadors and make them wise men in his kingdom. Okay, so this, however, was not one of the deportations. So if we look at our timeline here, I don't know if that's already was up or not, but if we look at it, we just kind of mentioned 605 BC and that stuff. We go on to 602 BC. A lot of people say, well, that was it right there. 602 BC is definitely one of the deportations. Why? Because King Jehoiakim stops paying tribute to Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, and the other thing that he does is Jehoiakim decides, I'm going to ally with Egypt. Okay, at this point, this is 3 years after the Battle of Carchemish. Egypt is kind of butthurt because they just lost a bunch of their land to Babylon. And so they're going around trying to get as many nations, as many cities to kind of join in with them they're trying to take back the land that they lost. Okay, so King Jehoiakim decides, yeah, man, I'm going to join with you, ally with you. And I'm not paying Nebuchadnezzar no more. I'm not down with Nebuchadnezzar and his dynasty in the Babylonian kingdom. Right? So this happens in 602 BC. Guys, that's not the deportation. That's when he stopped paying. And that is when he allies with Egypt. Now, because Egypt is trying to ally with a bunch of nations around Israel, it takes Nebuchadnezzar and his army a couple years to kind of make his way down to Jerusalem. Okay, he's having to fight little towns, little cities, kind of trying to reestablish what he has already gained, trying to kind of smack them around and get them into place, get his kingdom back into place. So it takes him 3 or 4 years to get back to Jerusalem after he's messing around with Egypt and some of these other cities and towns and provinces. Okay, so finally, Nebuchadnezzar gets to Jerusalem in 598 BC, which is, if King Jehoiakim reigned in Jerusalem for 11 years, at 609 BC, 11 years makes it 598 BC. Okay, this is when Nebuchadnezzar sacks the town, and he takes more of the articles and stuff from the temple, some of the gold and some of the artifacts, and this time he takes with him a few thousand people from Jerusalem, and this is where we have the first deportation. Okay, this is the first deportation. And along with this, when this happened, he takes King Jehoiakim and he slaughters him in front of everybody, and he chops him up into little pieces. I know it's getting a little barbaric here, but he basically puts his head on a pole and plants it here, and about 300 miles away in another part of Judah, he puts a couple of his feet. Then over here, a couple hundred miles, he puts a couple of his toes in his hands, and he just spreads his body throughout the entire land, basically making a statement. Okay, saying, if you guys do this, this is exactly what's going to happen. Don't mess with me. I'm the man. Pay me my money. Okay? So he installs Jehoiakim, and I know it's confusing. You got Jehoiakim, Jehoiakim. So Jehoiakim with an M is now dead. Jehoiakim is now placed as the king. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar says, okay, you're going to be the new king of Jerusalem, and all you got to do is pay me my money, do what I say, and I will leave you alone. So what happens is, well, some of Jehoiakim's advisors and some of his royal family are still aggravated and mad about what happened to Jehoiakim, and Jehoiakim only reigns in Jerusalem 3 months. Okay, and so they immediately, as soon as Nebuchadnezzar's armies kind of leave after a couple months, they immediately stop paying tribute and revolt. And so what Nebuchadnezzar and his armies have to do is they kind of have to double back. They're not very far this time, so they double back, start heading back to Jerusalem, and it's not even a year later, 597 BC, that is when he is the second deportation. Okay, and this time, Nebuchadnezzar takes 10,000 of the most prominent family members in Jerusalem and 7,000 soldiers back with him to Babylon. So this is a massive deportation here. 15 to 20,000 people go back at this time. Okay, and what he does this time with Jehoiakim is he takes him back to Babylon too. He is taken captive too, and for some reason, he shows grace and mercy to Jehoiakim, and he allows Jehoiakim to live in his court, in the royal courts of Babylon for the rest of his life. But after this takes place, 597 BC, he sets up Jehoiakim and Jehoiakim's uncle, King Zedekiah. He sets Zedekiah as the new king of Jerusalem. Okay, so Zedekiah, he plays nice, right? He plays nice for the first 8-9 years or so. Okay, he plays nice for the first 8 or 9 years, and he kind of reestablishes his kingdom. He starts building up some of his defenses, and he starts thinking, you know what? I'm not going to pay him no more. I'm going to stop paying Nebuchadnezzar. I'm going to start revolting down with his dynasty. I'm not messing around with him no more. We can do this on our own. Bad idea. Okay, if you know the book of Jeremiah, he talks about all this stuff, all the deportations, and he specifically talks about this point. If you remember, he gets thrown in the pit on this one. Poor Jeremiah is sitting there prophesying for the last 10, 20 years, everything that's going to happen, and they just won't listen. So here it goes. It happens a third time. So in 588 BC, Nebuchadnezzar and his army kind of makes it to the land of Judah, and they start besieging the land. Okay, and it takes them a little time, okay? From 588 to 586 BC, it takes them 2 years of besieging Judah and besieging Jerusalem's walls and stuff like that. It takes them a little bit of time. Like I said, it had been 8 or 9 years, and Israel or Judah was able to build up their defenses a little bit, okay? And so 2 years later, in 586 BC, the walls come crashing down. Nebuchadnezzar levels the temple. Israel's completely destroyed, wiped out, turned into dust, and this is where we have our third and final deportation. This time, pretty much everybody goes back, okay? The only people that are left there is the super old and the super poor, okay? Everybody else is gone, and they're going to Babylon. And believe it or not, King Nebuchadnezzar knew Jeremiah on a name-to-name basis. He had a lot of respect for Jeremiah. He knew him, and he tells all the people, he's like, you guys should have been listening to him all along. I don't know what your problem is. He was very well respected by Nebuchadnezzar. And trust me, all the guys that had been the last 2 deportations that are already in Babylon, trust me, they knew Jeremiah was a prophet after they went over there. So, but these guys still weren't learning. So Nebuchadnezzar places Jeremiah kind of in command of the area and just says, hey guys, this guy is amazing. He knows everything. Why don't you listen to him? Listen to him, and I'm going to leave you alone. And that was pretty much the end of Jerusalem for the next, until the Cyrus decree. So that is the 3 deportations. That was 598 BC, 597 BC, and 586 BC. Okay, and I wanted to kind of break that down for you guys, and so you have a real, true understanding of these deportations. Because we have 2 or 3 books in the Bible that specifically are all about the deportations and stuff, so we need to know that stuff. Okay, so I think we left off at verse 2, so we're going to get into verse 3. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, who was in charge of the palace officials, to bring to the palace some of the young men of Judah's royal family and other noble families who had been brought to Babylon as captives. And I'll probably read to verse 5 here. Select only strong, healthy, and good-looking young men, he said. Make sure they are all well versed in every branch of learning, are gifted with knowledge and good sense, and have the poise needed to serve in the royal palace. Teach these young men the language and literature of the Babylonians, And the king assigned them a daily ration of the best food and the best wine of his own in his own kitchens. They were to be trained for a 3-year period, and then some of them would be made his advisors to the royal court. All right. So here we go. We set the stage. We know that he's captive, and here we go. They're in their 3-year training. All right. Verse 6 here. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were 4 of the young men chosen, all from the tribe of Judah. The chief official renamed these men Babylonian names. Daniel was called Belshazzar, Hananiah was called Shadrach, Mishael was called Meshach, and Azariah was called Abednego. Okay, guys, this is the last time I'm going to mention Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego as these other names, because and Daniel's always going to be Daniel. Okay, I don't want to get confused. I don't want you to get confused. When you start going with all these names and they're all the same people, it's too much, and I can't even handle it, so I know you guys can't handle it. So it's Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from now on. Okay? So these 4 men are selected who are essential to the great book of Daniel, and they are placed there in a 3-year period. Before I get too far here, I'll stop right around verse 7. Guys, I am reading, you could probably see on there, from the NLT version, but I'm also going to bounce back to the King James Version, okay, the KJV. I have what I hear here is a parallel Bible. I am not a Bible snob, a translation snob, by no means. So if you have a different version, that is awesome. I think it is awesome to have a bunch of different types of translations of the Bible. It gives us an insight to different things. We don't always talk like they did back in the 15 and 1600s here, okay? And it is good to learn some of the other scriptures, or the other translations, I should say. So by all means, whatever you guys got, NIV, English Standard Version, whatever you got, it's cool, man. And I just wanted you to know what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of bounce back from these 2 versions, okay? Because they're both great, and we definitely need to have the King James Version on hand, because there's a lot of good things in there that we need to have that say a little bit different stuff that we need to refer back to. Just like verse 7, okay? Verse 7, if we read in the King James Version, refers to this Ashpenaz, which as the chief official or the prince of eunuchs. Okay, I don't know if you guys know what a eunuch is, but if you don't, that means they were castrated. Okay, so this guy is the prince of the eunuchs. Do I know for sure that Daniel and his 3 friends were not castrated? I don't know that, but according to the King James Version, this guy is the prince of the eunuchs. I don't know. I hope not. I really hope that when they got taken into captivity and there's hey, we're going to Babylon, I hope they didn't say, hey, guess what? When we get to Babylon, you know what we're going to do? Yeah, I really hope that didn't happen, man. Because if it did, I would just, dude, just kill me now, please. I don't just why do I got to do that? But anyways, I'll get my mind out the gutter. I just had to bring that up. I just had to. But I really hope that they weren't. Okay, so let's just move on to verse 8, and get over that part. Okay, verse 8. But Daniel made up his mind not to defile himself by eating meat or food and wine given to them by the king. He asked the chief official for permission to eat other things instead. Okay, let me switch my thing here. Okay, so he's asking not to eat certain meat and stuff like that. Guys, what is the type of meat that Jewish people don't eat? Most of you guys probably know this. Most Jews don't, well, I should say all Jews do not eat pork. Pork is not part of their regular diet, and in fact, most Arabic people in general do not eat pork. Okay, I know it's different. Here in America, we get down with some pork, right? Give me my baby back, right? I mean, we want some ribs. You can go to Burger King right now, and you can get a croissant sandwich for breakfast, and it's got sausage, bacon, and ham all on it. I mean, we want that pork on there like that, right? I mean, this is America, right? But here, these guys did not do that. They followed the book of the law, the book of Moses, and pork was forbidden, and it was considered detestable to the Lord, so they followed the law, okay? They weren't under grace. They followed the book of the law, okay? And so that's what they did. Okay, verses 9 and 10. Now God had given the chief official great respect for Daniel, but he was alarmed by Daniel's suggestion. My lord, the king has ordered that you eat this food and wine, he said. If you become pale and thin compared to the other youths your age, I am afraid the king will have me beheaded for neglecting my duties. So this chief official, he has favor in the eyes of Daniel and his three friends. But obviously he's scared and he's troubled because he doesn't want to get beheaded or get in trouble by Nebuchadnezzar, because we all know Nebuchadnezzar can be a little crazy at times. Okay? All right, verses 11 through 14. So Daniel kind of comes up with a plan here. Daniel talked it over with his attendant, who had been appointed by the chief official to look after Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Test us for 10 days on a diet of vegetables and water, Daniel said. At the end of the 10 days, see how we look compared to the other young men who are eating the king's rich food. Then you can decide whether or not to let us continue eating our diet. So the attendant agreed to Daniel's suggestion and tested them for 10 days. Okay, so we're going to stop right here just for a second. 10 days, vegetables, and water. Whew! All right, we're going to get at it in a second. But guys, there are two different fasts in the book of Daniel. Many of you know the 21-day Daniel fast. This is not that. Obviously, this is a 10-day fast of vegetables and water. But I will tell you, I don't know if you've ever done that fast before, but I have. And if you are a vegan or a vegetarian, this is probably not a big deal to you. This would be a piece of cake. But I'm telling you what, I did this about 5 or 6 years ago. I felt compelled to do this from the Lord. This was not my own choosing. But he had me do this, and I'm telling you what, it was the hardest thing. Hardest fast I've ever done in my life. Just vegetables and water. No fruits, no bread, no meat, no nothing. And I'm telling you what, from head to toe, my body hurt. The first day was not bad. I was just kind of a transition day. But I'm telling you, day 2, 3, and 4, it was like my body was going through withdrawals. Okay, I mean, the top of my head, it felt like it was going to explode. I had the worst headache. And then it kind of moved down to my shoulders and arms and chest. And then I had terrible, my stomach was killing me. There was many trips to, the bathroom, so to speak. It went down into my legs. And guys, it was horrible. Okay, I would not recommend this fast to anyone unless you are instructed to do so by the Lord. Okay, luckily this was in the wintertime, and at that time I was doing construction. I wasn't a police officer, so I didn't, during the wintertime, a lot of us get laid off, so I didn't have to work for those few days. I'm telling you what, day 2, 3, and 4, I don't think I could have worked. Literally, I could barely get out of bed and just move from the car. I don't know, man. It was crazy. For me, it was really difficult. Out there, some of you guys may say, I can do that, no problem. But I don't know, man. For me, it was terrible. Like I said, I wouldn't recommend you do it unless instructed by the Lord, or, if you just want to be bold and act like a man or a woman, whatever you want to call it. All right? But anyways, it kind of leads me to something I want to talk about real quick. Like I said, we have a couple of fasting examples in the book of Daniel. And I kind of want to go over this because I feel like fasting and praying and fasting is kind of like a lost art and something maybe many of us don't really understand. So I kind of want to go over this real quick with you guys, okay? The Holy Spirit is a wonderful gift from the Lord, okay? And many times he will encourage you or prompt you to fast and pray. This can be for yourself, or it can be many times for others, intercessory prayers. As we go through our daily lives, many decisions or issues that come about are honestly are just too much for us to handle without the Lord's guidance, okay? You could be praying for somebody's healing. Maybe there was a bad car accident. Maybe somebody got a bad report from the hospital, a family, a friend, whatever it could be. And you are like in all-out prayer mode, prayer and fasting mode, okay? Intercessory prayers, okay? And this is a good thing. A lot of times we have to do that, okay? But other times it may be for yourself. Maybe you're awaiting a decision in the courts, okay? Maybe you're possibly moving to a new area and you're unsure of what to do. Maybe you've got a job offer and am I take this job? I got to move 200 miles away from it. These are usually big moments in our lives. These are crossroads, okay? These are times when you are literally like, Lord, I don't know what to do. Please guide me. I have no clue. I need your help. And these are times when we want to pray and fast, okay? No matter what the cause may be, there are many difficult situations that sometimes call for prayer and fasting. And like I said, it seems it could be that we may have kind of gotten away from this or maybe don't really understand it. That's why we want to kind of talk about it right now. So fasting is a way to deny your flesh. Okay, and focus more on the Holy Spirit that lives in you. In this way, the Spirit will give insight to the will of God. Okay, what do I mean by that? Sometimes our fallen nature and our flesh will have incorrect motives. And this can cause problems when we're seeking our own desires and not the desires of the Lord. You know, guys, our flesh and our spirit are always warring with each other. And a lot of times we can pinpoint it, but there's a lot of times we can't. Okay, it's really close. And we don't know if this is something that we're wanting, or if the Lord's wanting, or if it's a fleshly action, or if it's the Spirit telling us. And these are times when you want to pray and fast. When you're at that, that seesaw battle in your mind, you're like, I don't know. Is this me or is this the Lord? I don't know. So this can happen all the time. Now, fasting doesn't mean that you always have to give up certain food or certain drinks or something like that, okay? It can be giving up anything that you enjoy doing or that you may be prompted to give up for a period of time. This shows your Father, your dependency upon Him and His will. Okay, you're being dependent on the Father here. Okay, and I can give you an example of that. Just a couple years ago, I had a kind of a big decision I was making, and I didn't know what to do. And I'm like, you know what? It's time. I need to probably pray and fast for a week. And so here I'm thinking for the next 24 hours, like, all right, I'm going to start Monday morning, I don't know what to do. What kind of food am I going to fast for? Am I going to do the no leaven bread or no meat or some kind of drink, no coffee, whatever it may be, right? And so, but I could feel that Sunday evening and that Monday morning, I could feel in my spirit, the Lord told me, He's like, I want you to fast from football. And if you guys don't know me out there, I am a huge fan of football. Okay, I love football. Okay, I love college, I love pros, anything to do with football, man. I don't even go to a high school game, I don't care. But the Lord said, I want you to fast from football. And for me personally, that was really hard. Okay, no ESPN, no sports talk radio, no Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon football, no Sunday. And so, guys, this was like at the end of November, so we're like talking playoff push, you know what I'm saying? And so this was really hard for me to do. I would have much rather given up some kind of food or some kind of drink. That would have been easy for me. But sometimes the Lord challenges us. I had to be really dependent upon Him during that time. So that's just an example that I had that the Lord told me to give up. And everybody's different. I know some of you guys are like, football, who cares? But, for me, that was tough. Okay? But always follow up fasting with intense prayer. Okay? Make a conscious effort to pray about the circumstance or the situation earnestly and often during your time of fasting. So I know a lot of us have, we have our mornings with the Lord, and maybe have the morning and the nighttime, maybe nighttime your thing, or maybe both. But even when you're like driving to work or you're at work or whatever, shoot up some of those, pop up those quick prayers about the situation. Whenever your mind crosses or whenever you think about it, go ahead and pray about that. Okay, God hears the prayers of His children. Okay, and so you want to do this diligently. Okay, so just keep on keeping on and keep praying. I don't care if it's a 2-word prayer, bam, you just keep going. When you're praying and fasting, you're in all-out mode. Okay, but I will tell you, just as Jesus our King stated, and He taught this in the Gospels, make sure to be humble about your fasting and your prayer. Okay, this is between you and your Father. So don't go around making a big spectacle of things. Okay, you don't want to go around going, oh man, dude, I totally didn't have pizza or any Coke for 4 days. I'm dying, man. I'm dying. Okay, you don't want to go around telling everybody what you're doing and making a big scene about your fasting, okay? So try to keep that between you and the Lord, okay? And I know I get a little outlandish with some of my examples, but hey, I'm just trying to make a point here. But like I said, it's between you and the Lord, okay? But I will tell you, sometimes every once in a while, you're going to have somebody that offers you something that you're fasting from, or is going to ask you to do something that you're fasting from, okay? And these are times when you may want to take that person aside and say, hey, man, or whoever, say, I'm not trying, I don't want to offend you or nothing like that, but I've really been praying a lot about something. I'm kind of fasting from that. So I just want you to know I'm not going to eat that, or I can't really do that right now. I don't want you to take offense. It's just something between me and the Lord. Kind of do something like that. That way you're not offending somebody. Because sometimes, you come over to somebody's house and they got all this food and you're like, oh, I'm not eating it. You may have to do that every once in a while. But tell them about your situation a little bit. Say what you're praying about, and maybe they will help you. Maybe ask them to pray for you. The more prayers, the better, right? So these are just some examples I was given to there. But finally, be sure of your motives for fasting. Okay, sometimes we can get confused about what we want instead of what we need. So we need to keep all selfishness aside. And so what do I mean is just say Joe and his family take their boat out on the lake, and they got a pretty nice boat. Okay, it's a perfect boat for their family, and they go out on the boat all day and they're having fun, and okay, it's over with. They get their trailer in the truck, they back it down to the ramp, and they load up the boat, and they're on their way back to town. They're going to get some food, and when they're in town, they see a boatyard, and they say, whoa, look at that boat. That one's way better than mine. Oh man, I want to have that boat. You know what, family? You know what we're going to do right now? Starting tomorrow, you and the rest of us, we are going to pray and fast for that boat, and let's see if the Lord will give me that boat. I'm telling you right now, the Lord's going to give us that boat. Guys, that's not exactly what you need to do. Do you kind of understand the point I'm getting? Are you really doing for something that you need, or is this something that you're just kind of fleshly wanting, okay? Maybe you don't need to really fast and pray for that boat. I mean, maybe you do. I don't know. I'm just trying to give you an example here. But we need to keep selfishness aside, okay? And so, like I said, I wanted to give you a quick little teaching on fasting, because it is very important, especially right now. Guys, it is 2020. And it is insane. And there has never been a time more than I can think of in my lifetime that we need to pray and fast. And that could be for our country, that could be for our cities, nation, world, whatever. I mean, this is nuts. So it's a big deal, and we do need to do some praying and fasting all across the board, okay? So let's get back into our scriptures, guys. We're almost there. Just a few more left, okay? Verses 15 and 16. Now I got to catch where I'm at. I'm talking too long here. Verse 15 and 16. At the end of the 10 days, Daniel and his 3 friends looked healthier and better nourished than the young men who had been eating the food assigned by the king. So after that, the attendant fed them only vegetables instead of the rich foods and wines. So here we go. These guys look healthier and more normal than any of the other guys, and so their request is granted, and they can pretty much get whatever food they ask for because they did it. I should say the Lord did it. Verse 17. God gave these 4 young men an unusual aptitude for learning the literature and science of the time, and God gave Daniel special ability in understanding the meaning of visions and the meaning of dreams. So we know that God, his hand was upon these 4 guys, these 4 men, and they gave them all special wisdom and understanding. But as for Daniel, we see that God gave him a very special gift, and that gift was the spirit of understanding dreams and visions, and the gift of discerning of spirits, okay? This is a prophetic gift that Daniel was given, and this would cement his legacy or in his destiny as one of the greatest prophets of all time. Okay? He's awesome. Verse 18. When the 3-year training period ordered by the king was completed, the chief official brought all the young men to King Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, here we go. It's over. Verse 19. The king talked with each of them, and none of them impressed him as much as Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they were appointed to his regular staff of advisors. Okay, we just talked about it. God's hand is upon them, and he is very thrilled and enjoyed his newly acquired students here and his wise men. Verse 20. In all matters requiring wisdom and balanced judgment, the king found the advice of these young men to be 10 times better than all the magicians, enchanters, and mediums, and all the other wise men in the entire kingdom. Here we go. That's what I like to call Satan's prophets. Okay? Notice the Bible states magicians, astrologers, enchanters, and all this stuff, and that these guys were 10 times better, wiser, and more intelligent than all of these guys. Okay? That's because they're the Lord's prophets. Like I said, you got mediums, and you got these sorcerers, but then you got the prophets of the Lord who are 10 times, 100 times better than those guys. Right? And that's what these guys are. Okay? Verse 21, last verse. Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus's reign. Okay. So he's there until the end of the Babylonian Empire when King Cyrus comes in there. But we just talked about that, the Persian Empire. They kind of take over Babylon in one night. And then right after that, we have the Cyrus decree, which allows the Judeans and the Jews to return home back to Jerusalem and to the Judah area. Okay? Like I said, read the book of Ezra, and it talks all about that stuff right there. So that is it for chapter 1 of Daniel and lesson 2. Okay? I'm hoping you guys enjoyed it. Next week we have, in lesson 3, we have Daniel chapter 2. So that right there, chapter 2 of Daniel is kind of like the building blocks of prophecy. Okay? That is where we really cement some of these kingdoms. If you know Daniel chapter 2, it's Nebuchadnezzar's dream of that statue. Okay, and the statue represents different kingdoms. And so we're going to need to know that stuff for the remainder of Daniel, especially when we get into, I think it's chapter 9, 10, and 11. We're really going to know these kingdoms. Okay, so we're going to start the building blocks of that next week. Like I said, I hope you enjoyed it. God bless you guys. Keep praying for our nation. We need it out there. It's insane. But tune in next week, and we will get this going. Like I always say, even in the class I teach, read chapter 2 before we get into it. That way you got a kind of a general understanding of what's going on here. But I love you guys. Like I say, keep Jesus number one. Amen.